Hi, everyone, and welcome to a very special Art for Art webinar this evening with Magnum nominee member Lindokuhle Sobekwa in conversation with Josh Ginsberg, director of the A4 Arts Foundation in Cape Town. And here at One to One Children's Fund, we're celebrating our 20th anniversary. And here's a film that compacts 20 years into 1 minute.
You take massive inspiration from what's happening and hope for all the people who are being helped by one-to-one.
And one of them is me.
This is our new family.
I'm glad you're here.
One to One is showing that an AIDS-free generation is within our hands.
Is HIV negative.
One to One is making a huge difference to the lives of so many children. Where would they be without One to One? Where would One to One be without you?
Well, in recent years, Linda has worked very closely with Mikhail Subotsky, Gideon Mendel, who many of you will have seen in that great conversation at our last Art for Art webinar. And it was Gideon then who introduced me to Linda, and tonight's conversation is the beginning of an exciting collaboration with Linda and with Magnum. Josh has helped develop our Art for Art concept, which was due to culminate in a live art tour to South Africa this month. But for the time being, we're instead bringing you these unique conversations, Art for Art conversations on Zoom. But why Art for Art? Art for Art is art for ART, antiretroviral treatment. And it's antiretroviral treatment that we've been championing and we've been supporting for the full 20 years. And some of the images from that film that you saw came from where we started at Groote Hospital in 2001, and where we provided the first antiretroviral treatment to children in a hospital setting. And then in 2005, we moved to the more challenging Eastern Cape. And wow, that Eastern Cape is still even more challenging today. And for those in South Africa who get the Daily Maverick, you'll see the coverage that's going to be rolling out over the next few days on the conditions in the Eastern Cape. We've seen it on our television screens here. So it's a difficult province for all sorts of reasons. And even today, 25% of the pregnant women certainly in our area of the Eastern Cape are HIV positive. And the reason why it's so difficult is, aside from the health department, there are, in the rural areas, there's huge distances to clinics, and there's big stigma. So for two reasons, traveling and stigma, people are just not presenting at clinics until very late and too late in the process. So that's why we came up with this art support program, using those with lived experience, those who've actually lived through HIV and have positively embraced it, and training them to be mentors in their community. We call them mentor mothers. And that way, we're not reliant on the clinics, because these mothers live in their communities and they know everyone in that community. And we've developed this process of house-to-house care, house-to-house community health. And so the women, the mentor mothers, become role models and in these communities, and everyone is covered and everyone is looked after, and we have early warning. And so we're not getting people presenting too late at the clinics. And the result of that is that we've reduced mother-to-child transmission to zero, not a single case after 1,500 pregnancies. And Linda, I know your father's family live in Kumbu, which is not that far away from where we are, and we support the clinics in that area. So when you go to the Eastern Cape, you'll have special insight into the work that we do. Which brings me to Lindo's visit. Lindo's actually going in about a month's time, and one of the reasons is that the way we've run this program, our mentor mothers have the clinic files of each of the clients or patients, and instead of now being on paper, we've developed an app. So it's a technology solution that is going to enable us to scale this program beyond, way beyond the area that we're in at the moment. And the app is dependent on having a good smartphone. So we've provided our mentor mothers, and there are about 30 of them, plus the support staff, with new Samsung phones. And we've sent one to Lindo. So Lindo is going to be able to run a workshop over a couple of days with our mentor mothers and showing them how to take good pictures on their phones. And so that has a empowerment, it has a sustainability element for us, because we'll be able to get good pictures to show the work to our donors and to those who are participating in it. So it's a wonderful initiative, and Lindo will be taking pictures of the work and in his artistic way, and that hopefully will culminate in an exhibition in South Africa and in London of Lindo's photos as well as the mentor mother's photos. So this is really and truly art for art in action. So I hope that conveys to you why art is such a strong connection for us with ART. And now I think I'll hand over to Josh and to Lindo to have their conversation, and I'll wrap up at the end. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Lindo, I don't know if it's on just my side, but your video has gone away, or is it just me?
No, I think Lindo.
Okay, may have a technical issue. While we wait, let's actually give him a second.
I hope there isn't load shedding in his part of South Africa.
There we go. Yeah. Hey, Lindo. Welcome back.
Sorry.
No, all good. Okay, so David, thanks again. It's a privilege to be a part of this process. It's extraordinary the work that you're doing, and the opportunity to play a part, some small part, is a privilege. So thank you for the invitation, and looking forward to many more engagements together. My name's Josh Ginsberg. As David mentioned, I'm the director of A4 Arts Foundation, which is a not-for-profit free-to-public laboratory for the arts in Cape Town. I won't say too much about that, only that our intention is to provide a framework for extraordinary talented people to take chances and explore their artistic practices effectively as far as they can, sort of prototype ideas and to bring critical friends together, people who care about the development of an artistic practice, and to challenge ideas and grow them collectively in the interest of being able to share widely. So I've had the enormous privilege of working closely with Lindo on the basis of actually another, as David mentioned, Lindokuhle Sobekwa, whom of course had that wonderful talk on this platform not so long ago. Lindokuhle shared Lindo's work with me some years ago, and over the course of the last 3 years-ish, has kept me like closely up to date with Lindo's just extraordinary work. And then some months back, Lindo and I started talking, and Lindo came to A4 as a resident late last year. A resident effectively means some space and time to explore ideas on one's own terms. And myself and my amazing team kind of dug in and started working closely with Lindo to not only learn about the work he's been doing, but also ideally provide a platform for new ideas to grow and emerge. So the long and short of it is that I really have been, extraordinary privilege to get close to the work you do, Lindo, not only the things, but the approach and the attitude. And it's been a joy. Again, the quality of the photographs you produce, but most importantly, the care with which you make them and the kind of inventiveness with which you move forward has been inspiring to us and to the organization at large. So tonight, whoopsie, my screen, I figured that's about as much talking as I'd like to do. And Linda, hopefully you can take us through some ideas through pictures. What I have is a selection of photographs that are made based on some ideas that we've discussed. And perhaps I can just prompt you and you can introduce to this audience some of these key projects and how they link to each other and the kind of thoughts that emerge as they're going. So perhaps just to dive in, I'll skip this and come back to this later. Niope. So Niope, as I understand it, was one of your earliest projects, and it's also one that got you a fair amount of attention. Could you sort of describe what this project was about and how it unfolded and what it meant for you as a photographer?
Thank you, Josh, and thank you for also having me here. So yeah, I began photography early on in high school. And at the time, I didn't know nothing about, photography or holding the camera. So I remember one of our mentors, because we had like these workshops which were happening on the weekend, he used to come with like photographic books, but mostly documentary based book. So, and then we were given an assignment to go photograph home. I remember I was walking around in my community here in Polar Park, and there was this shack, which is kind of like a stigmatized shack where the Nyobe guys live. There's like a crowd of them in that area. So I remember, I usually carry my camera on my neck. I remember they called me and they asked me to take like photographs of them. And at the time, I was a bit hesitant to go there because I had already this idea that maybe they're trying to take my camera, or something, or maybe this was one of their tricks. But something in me,
let me just qualify for the audience. The Niope, would you just describe what that is? It's like quite a potent drug, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah. So Niope, it's a white fine powder, very highly addictive drug, which is a combination of antiretroviral drugs, detergent powder, red poison. So there's different ingredient from one, Niope to another. So so the guys who smoke Niope, they either inject it, on their veins, or they smoke it with like marijuana. So so like when I was invited to make those photographs, I returned back with the prints, to give to the guys. And I remember, one guy made a comment that, he has turned out to be this animal, and he doesn't like how he, he has turned out. And I remember proposing this, that, I would love to come here, like, on a daily basis to make like a photo story. And at that time, I had this idea that photography can change someone's life. Because for me, these are the guys I used to look up to. Some of them I grew up with them. We went to school together. So I didn't like to see them in that situation. So I thought, photography could be something that could, change their lives. And yeah, fast forward that, I did this body of work for like 8 years now. So I continue to, to work on this, which there's another chapter. So yeah, and I think also at that time, I was still now also, I was like inspired by a lot of, documentary work which were produced, from South Africa and also abroad. The first one was, of course, Ernest Cole. His work, was banned in my mind, and Santu Mofokeng and David Goblet. So this kind of work, I think, I have sort of, got some inspiration from it, to produce many different works.
So, Linda, I remember you saying that as you said earlier, these were guys that you looked up to. They were part of the community, and to some extent, you could see yourself in them in some way, or was there some identification? Because it sounds like it was a sustained project, and they really let you in. They trusted you. So how does that unfold? How do they start to learn to trust and believe that what is their imagining of how these pictures would be used?
Yeah, I mean, at the time I was a grade 11 student in high school, so I didn't have so much, a lot of education on photographs and maybe things like representation and many other things. So I think in terms of sensitivity and in terms of representation, it's what I've learned through this project. So with the guys, I mean, I spend so much time sort of trying to make them comfortable, with my presence, with the camera, and of course I wasn't there always with the camera, and photographing. So sometimes we're like sort of having conversations. And I think the guys were also glad that there was someone there, for them, because no one is paying, attention. So, so I think my presence and bringing back the work that I've shot of them, created that trust. And of course, they didn't agree always with the work that I produced of them. So with this argument or or negotiation of the work, because I had this idea of how I wanted the story to unfold, and also they had their own ideas. So which is interesting, because when I did chapter 2, that was more like our collaborative effort in terms of what do we make and what they feel comfortable producing out there.
Chapter 2 is in some sense a kind of following of the journey, right, of some of the individuals and what had become of their lives in different directions. Is that right?
Yes, no, that's true. So if you go back, there's a shack that is banned in Nyaobe series. So this was when I lost contact with most of the guys, because what happened here is when someone said that one of the guys had robbed them in a nearby train station. So this is one thing, that the guys become the first suspect in anything that happened, in the community. I've witnessed some of them, in situations like mob justice, others like, being beaten up, others running away from the community. So in this instance, so they arrived in the shack and there was no one. So this is the only shack. This is the shack that I was invited in. So they banned the shack. And the shack, unfortunately, banned other 10 shacks, because this is within like a squatter camp. So I had lost contact with some of them, because some of them, went back to their homes. Some of them went and lived in the streets or something like that. So I was connected with just few guys, which we continue keeping in touch. So chapter 2, when I followed up on the story, I realized that a lot of guys, they have passed away. And I photographed, some of their funeral. I asked one family, because one guy was found dead, somewhere, to go photograph them, to go photograph the funeral in the countryside. So with chapter 2, it was more of looking at, the healing process, and also this collaborative kind of diary form, which is partly inspired by my project on Zianda. And also chapter 2, again, I realized that, it was, I could have simply been in their shoes, I could have simply been in their situation, because we grew up together, we grew up in the same environment, we faced the same challenges, because a lot of them, it was, what led them to drugs was a lot of like, traumatic stories and, peer pressure from friends. So, I mean, I was part and parcel of that, so, I mean, I could be there, in any time, or one of my siblings. So I was really looking, myself, through them. And at the same time, I think some of the stories were reflected, because what happened with the Nyapeka is we tend to judge them and not understand the story that led them into that situation. So with chapter 2, in like more especially the diaries, it brings back those stories, those personal stories, and you look at the old images, someone who've lost their mother, and how that affected them. So yeah, chapter 2, it was more of like sort of like a diaristic therapeutic form,
Sure, I must say I'll just go back for the audience. These 3 images, I think they speak so acutely to what you've been saying, just incredibly gentle and proximate pictures. They could only be taken by someone who was, had privileged contact and access, and who could empathize explicitly with these young men. So I find these just extraordinarily beautiful. I didn't actually put images in, unfortunately, diaries, but to some extent there's a formal correlation between the diaries you're referring to and I carry a photo with me, which is this project. Could we maybe pivot in there and sort of share how because this project is extraordinary in its form, well, in so many ways, as an autobiography, as an inquiry, but also as a formal investigation, meaning this diary that you made and the relationship between the pictures to the text and so on, that then you've been playing out more recently with us at A4. But yeah, I've got a couple of these pictures in line. Can you share a little bit about Zianda and this process? Have I stalled or have you stalled, Linda? David, do you know?
Yeah, I think it's clearly
Linda.
Linda. He's probably going to dial back in again. So
okay, no problem.
You can intro this this particular.
Yeah, I'll share what I know of this process, and Linda can step in.
Great.
There's there he goes. Hey, Linda. Sorry.
No, actually, my connection.
Totally. No problem.
Sorry.
So just could you introduce the I carry a photo with me, this project, which I was just saying, to my mind is both a profound project in its content and its care, but also in its form and how it manifested and how it proceeded into this book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, thanks. So yeah, so this project, what motivated it to exist as a project, or maybe to exist as a diary, because this project was meant for me and also maybe my family. I discovered this family photograph, which my sister's face was cut out in my mother's Bible, which sort of brought back a lot of memories, and yeah, both good and bad. And a very memory which came very strongly in my mind was when my sister disappeared. It was when I got hit by a car in a road in Kumalo Street. So that was the last day we all saw her, and for a very long time, I kept on sort of blaming myself about this, because every time, during family gatherings, when someone talks about my sister's disappearance, it was always associated with me, so I felt a little bit of guilt, and then I thought, again, I this trust into a photograph, this trust to a camera and a photograph in terms of, either finding solutions or finding answers that it could help me to understand what happened or where my sister had went. So so my sister was found, this is before I became a photographer, was found in a hostel by my mother, and she was very sick, and then she was with us at home, and I had to sacrifice my bed for her to to sleep over. And I at that time I was very furious, because I had so many questions to ask her, and I couldn't, because she was really sick, and her answers were not sufficient for me. So and I just began to be a photographer at the time. And, most of the time we're, together. And I remember seeing this beautiful light, which was shining over her face. And I remember picking up a camera, and she told me that if you take that photograph, I'm going to kill you. And I remember respecting that and not taking a picture. But afterwards, I regretted it because I realized we didn't have a picture. So when she passed away, the family group portrait, which we showed in one Christmas, her face was cut out, and that photograph was used as was enlarged and was used for her funeral. So, and then, when I discovered that photograph, I wanted to know, I wanted to know, what my sister went through and the type of life she lived, and perhaps to bring that to my family. So it began as this kind of diary form where we'll go out and make photographs and paste it like in my sort of, diary. And I met through that, with the help of my cousin, I got to meet some of my sister's friends, and some agreed for me to photograph them, and some did not, and I respected that. So I continued with this up until this, was realized as a project. And when it was realized the project, in terms of its book form or diary form, it changed from like one damage to another. I think I remember I showed you, Josh, when you were in Joburg, the very first version of this book. So yeah, I'm just
No, I mean the again, to reiterate, I think the book's a profound project of searching, and I think for anyone who has the luxury of paging through it digitally or physically, it's I mean, moving is an understatement. But I also think what's fascinating is that it starts to present formally a kind of openness that I feel you have to the medium, where the photograph is a means, as you said earlier, to find something, to ask a question, some kind of tool for knocking at the door of some unanswered query. And it's part of it. And here the text starts to filter in, and the relationship between text and image, and the narrativization in a book too. And it's incredibly, I mean, just even looking at this pair, the text is the same pride of place as the image does. And that says a great deal about how you read both of them. So it's suddenly you see images as text too. But I also think that, and again, we'll touch on it later, but it opens the door to some of the work you've been doing more recently that really does like disentangle the photograph in some way from its perceived or expected applications, and starts to tease out what's possible. I mean, to revert here's the family picture, one of them that Linda was speaking about, and there's the picture of his sister's face cut out of it. And you'll see some of the later work when we get to it later that like really starts to play actually with this aesthetic. So yeah, this book is an extraordinary thing.
Thank
you. Okay, this is just interesting for later, again, for the audience to take note of this picture, because when you look at Ezelalini later, it's actually beautiful to see this picture. That's your grandmother, correct?
Yes, that's my grandmother. Yeah, I mean, this is one of the great thing about, doing this body of work on Zianda. It made me to sort of find part of myself, to we say esiXhoseni ukuzilanda, which means, I don't know how to translate it, properly in English, but it has to do with kind of finding yourself. So I mean, I had not known my countryside or my home. The only home I knew was, in Johannesburg. So this body of work made me to go where my mother was born and where my family considered as home, and where Zianda grew up, and I got to connect with my grandmother as well, who told me, some stories about Zianda and stories of my mother, and and then she's the person who still cases Johannesburg for a place that had swallowed, her children. And I remember we spoke, briefly about this idea of colonialization and apartheid, what it has done to family identity, fragmentations of culture. So yeah, I mean, this was one of the thing that I wanted to, to put across into the book.
So, okay, so again, I've got the privilege of knowing some of the essays coming or the processes coming, just for the sake of the audience, just to kind of clarify some of the things that we've been introduced thus far to Intercosa, right? Neope was in Intercosa, correct? That's where you were raised. The project tracking and trying to understand Zianda's life also led, as you described, to exploring your own life and registering that there was a part of your ancestry and a part of you that was in the country, but effectively it was not where you grew up. So it was kind of meeting a foreign land that is also ancestral land. And that you address in an essay to come, and we will get there. But I just want everyone kind of hold on to that moment. Toza is home. The countryside, as Lalini, is also a home, but there's the question of how they integrate. And as you pointed to, there's the fragmentation and the sort of, the prospect of a fragmented and ideally some kind of complex integration. But then before that, there is this project, Daleside, which sort of segues a little bit and quite incredibly. And if I recall, Daleside is a suburb where your mum worked for some time, right, as a housekeeper. And what I remember you saying so pointedly is that you'd go there and she'd have to spend a lot of time with the kids of the home in which she lived. And you would perhaps go over there to Daleside, I suppose to fetch her, I'm guessing, but you were never allowed inside the spaces. And that there was this like very strange, maybe an understatement, tension of both the time your mother was spending with another family and the fact that you were prohibited from entering these domestic spaces. So Daleside was inquiry into that rupture.
Yes, no, that's true. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for me, yeah, I mean, when I became a photographer, I think, I wanted to really go to places that I don't think I would necessarily have went to these places if I didn't have a camera. I wanted to face sort of like my fears sometimes, to confront certain things that interested me or that did not interest me. So yeah, with Daleside, for example, I mean, Daleside, it was first of all, a very difficult place to kind of penetrate and document. And I collaborated on this project with a French photographer, Cyprien, Delmas, who I had a wonderful time working with for like 5 years. For like 1 year, we did not get access in Daleside. So like everyone was a bit reluctant to allow us in their space. So through consistency and going there, back and forth, we were kind of allowed in the space. So yeah, my mother used to work in the space, in the early 2000s, and I remember, my mom playing with the kids. To me, that was a bit painful as a kid because, my mother will arrive at home very exhausted. You couldn't even discuss, homework or whatever. So, I mean, I had those kind of feelings when I went to Daleside, and also, I mean, I ended up, enjoying the people there, and I was accepted in the community. I documented, and like Nyaupe, I kept on bringing back, the photographs, and what was amazing was that when we returned with Cyprien in Daleside, our work will be decorated in their walls or framed. So, that kind of motivates you as a photographer, that, someone is appreciating your work. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, I think also Daleside looks at, a lot of things, besides only my mother working there, but also it looks at the question of race, the question of class, also, maybe the question of land, because yeah, I mean, a lot of people used to work in Delside, back when it was um, um, when it was like uh, its economy was, I think it's I don't know how to say this,
It was,
but
it was
when it,
largely a white community, right, initially, and then over time it's become more integrated, right?
yeah, sure.
Yeah. Can I ask, actually, I've never asked you this, so I just want to, this picture, which I just think is astonishing. I remember you saying, this is a real fight, and there was like some serious possible damage. When you're taking a picture like this, what's happening? Is there what's the feeling of what's happening in front of you? Is it a sort of way of protecting yourself from this violence? Can you recall the kind of sense of taking the picture, not so much what's in it, but what it was like to be there?
Yeah, I shot this image. It was one of the guys' children's birthday party, so we were invited to the party. So, and these two brothers started fighting, and I don't know like what I was thinking, but I just instinctively took the photograph, and you know and this was like really bad, was like a really bad fight. And someone said, don't stop them, let them fight. That's how men resolve their issues. And then after they were done fighting, the guy came to me and said, did you get the shot? And I found that strange. I thought maybe he was gonna be furious at that. And I said, yes. Like, yeah, please bring that photograph for me. So yeah, this is one moment. I think as a photographer, you don't think, you just react into the moment. So this was like one of those moments that I reacted to. Yeah, it was kind of a nervous situation, for also the kids. The kids are trying to stop them, but the grandfather, the father of the guy, said, stop them. Don't stop them. Let them resolve their issues.
Right. Yeah, that instinct is astonishing. Like that would be the impulse, and the picture's got all that tension in it. I love this. Just to finish Daleside, this again, this incredibly gentle, almost landscapian picture. Okay, so now, again, to reiterate, Intercosa, the question of the countryside emerges through the Zianda project. Daleside is a segue into a different community that also allows you, well, you somehow create an intimacy with that community that allows you that kind of proximity that we just saw, which is astonishing. But more recently, the investigation has been around home, right? And on the question of home, where it is and how to integrate it or reintegrate it. And this is a lot of the work that was happening while you were at A4. So yeah, can you talk a little bit about this? Maybe start with this picture specifically, and then there's about 5 I've got here in the series.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, yeah, Ezlalini, the country, the project that was sort of like a follow-up on iCare fought with me. Through that investigation, I found myself Ezlalini, where it's home, where my mother, is from, where is like our ancestral home. The picture we're looking at is, it's my mother, paying a visit to my sister and my uncle, graveside. So yeah, I mean, as Lalini, for me, it really provided this opportunity to connect with my ancestors, which I didn't know. I remember, during December, people will say, they are going as Lalini, which is the countryside, and we left there, and I thought, as a young boy, this is our home. There's no other home. But to find out through this project that we have also this distance home, which is called Edzomo, where my mother is from, and also where my father is from, Ekumbu. So yeah, I mean, this project in a way introduced me to that, but also at the same time, for my last trip, I felt this disconnect, to the place, because it's a place that I I just known recently. And one of the things that made me to kind of disconnect with the place was because of the stories that were said, about my sisters, Yanda, and also my mother, and how they left the place. So, I felt, maybe, I don't belong in this place. So yeah, I mean, also through A4, because at the time I was struggling a bit in terms of, sort of editing or connecting the story. So what was interesting is that, we discovered this interesting horizon which connects, all the project here. The horizon was very powerful, that it connected one landscape to, to another, for me, because I traveled, in different places there. And also there was that horizon, in the landscape that was connecting with another horizon. And, a horizon also being a place that one can not arrive. It's always this distance place. So I felt that same feeling with the Zilali, in that it was that horizon that I can never arrive. You can just look at it, far as some sort of admiration, but you can never, be connected to it. I felt maybe my home is towards, I don't know.
Right. Unfortunately, I don't have an example of what you're talking about, but I'll try to describe for the audience. Imagine taking this picture in front of you and this picture in front of you, and putting them alongside one another, where this horizon line here connects with effectively this perceived horizon of the horse, and the two have a relationship to each other where they kind of unexpectedly connect, and they make a claim towards this horizon. And as Linda is saying, this horizon of a place that perhaps you aspire to but never arrive at. And this unlocked a potential in those. Okay, well, let me just actually, I'm going to zoom back. Sorry for this. I wish I was more. I just want to show you guys right early on. I did say we'd touch it. Here's an example. It's a specific kind of example because we framed these up. But these are pictures from two very different spaces. This is from Tailside, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and then this is from Islalini, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, you can see the strategy of using the horizon to connect these two completely unlike places, but that have a relationship to this, or they represent an attempt to bring a fragmented sort of environment together and recognize it as, in some sense, cohered. And this was the strategy that we were playing around with, both framed, in some cases, 5, 6, 7 pictures of different scales linking to each other, where they'd both be an individual and part of a series. And as I was describing earlier, I'll touch base on this picture here again. So here's the Islalini image, here's a tree, and then Linda goes on to really like play out this question of the family tree in this. Will you speak about this briefly, Linda?
Yeah, actually, I was listening to John Coltrane, before this conversation, and in one of his quotes, he talks about, in the sentence, he start in the middle and move in both directions simultaneously. So I'm thinking now about this tree that, both these two trees, one is from in the Eastern Cape and one is from Togoza. So I remember, us studying simultaneously, in both directions. So yeah, I mean, the idea of the tree, I think, for me, it's what kind of made the project all together to kind of make sense, more especially the Ezilalini project, because the tree, this family tree, which I used different fragments. One was my mother's diary writing. So, there's like a little bit of small lines in there, which is like my mother's diary about her reasons of living, the countryside, and also, my uncle who followed his father, who was the first one to go to Johannesburg and work as a miner in the early 60s. So, and also the trees moves in different places, where you also look at, our family trees, and also people that I've never had the opportunity to meet, but only to write their names on this tree. But also, I remember a conversation we had. I think Tim Gossi described the tree also as an interesting metaphor of this idea of strange food song, and also that the tree, that Black people didn't only enjoy the shadows of the trees, but also they've enjoyed the pain, thinking of the lynching and the hanging. So I was thinking of all these stories, how they related to my mother's diary, which we try to to bring it in this tree. So yeah.
I also think what's just very beautiful. Actually, wait, I want to make one point, and I have been alluding to it the whole time, is that in addition to just sheer intuition and remarkable natural composition of your photographs themselves, you also have a willingness to just test the medium, play with it. I mean, this tree is large, guys. You can see there. This is a test that Lindo did in A4, which I'll also describe. You can see the scale of it. These are photocopies, other little prints, drawings, all of which are, justifiably images in and of themselves. They could be at scale, but it's just completely unafraid to restage them and maneuver them and collage with them to try and compose something else, something beyond the single image. Now, the tree, as it appears going up and down, I also found amazing, where the tree is this thing we know, we're aware of its roots, but here you've kind of positioned the tree as equally above and below ground, and like unidirectional, and just also found that quite like pinpoint accurate on all the things that you were probing and wondering after. This picture is interesting. So Lindo was set to open an exhibition at A4 that played out a bunch of the things that he's been describing, and in conversation in the same exhibition, but a separate work, was to be a piece by Mikhail Subotsky. And I want to touch on that relationship between you and Mikhail. Unfortunately, there was a fire at our building, and that curtailed things somewhat. So we're still under renovation, or restoration. But what we did do is use a section of our gallery to sort of pull together some ideas just to take stock before sort of taking a breather and realizing the show later this year. And there's some interesting things here that I just want to sort of point to. Here's the shack image we saw earlier, exploded over, 12 frames. This was part of a conversation we had, but these were just tests that we did to kind of explore different relationships. In this instance, that image you saw, broken up over 2 frames, set alongside an image of Mikhail's. And there's one more I want to point to here. Okay, Linda, here's a picture from the op-ed too, and then this astonishing picture of Ernest Cole's. And we started the conversation with you pointing to Ernest Cole, and maybe it's appropriate to kind of reach back to the elders, I suppose. You said something quite astonishing about reading Ernest Cole in the dark or at night, and maybe that's a fine place for us to go full circle.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. I was privileged, firstly, to encounter Ernest Cole's book through a teacher of mine when I was in high school, and I remember at that time I wasn't sure, what photography to do or what photography is, and I remember, like at night I was alone and I was going through that photo book, House of Bandage. I remember, crying, while I was like, going through those images. And yeah, I mean, Ernest Cole remained my hero, from that, time, until now. And someone that, I also had the privilege to go through his contact sheet in Magnum Photos, how incredible he was in terms of, image making, and also, reading a little bit of his diary. So I think he was the master, including Santu, whom I had the privilege to meet as well. As a high school student, I think I was, I had this courage to kind of approach my heroes. So I remember meeting him, and showing him my work. you know, he had asked me to print my work, and I remember him throwing my images down and like, so clearly you can take photographs, but like, what have you written? And I remember looking at him and like, no, I didn't write anything. At that time, I didn't like this idea of writing or reading, you know, I mean, so it was not part of my kind of, you know, it was not, you know, the things I liked. So, yeah, I mean, he challenged me in terms of reading and writing, you know, and I remember there was like a bunch of newspapers, him telling me that take those newspapers and go read. Next time I see you, show me what you've written and what you've read. I'm like, my last time seeing this old man, I'm not coming back again. But years later, you know, that catched up with me, and you know, I think
There's
yeah.
so much evidence of that now, of just like both writing but other forms of articulation and meandering and wandering. It's so great to see so animated talk about the you know, the elders of photography, and it is precious to be able to bring those pictures into the conversation and to have those voices alive both in you and on the wall, you know, as we move forward. And unfortunately, it's not enough time to describe it, but just want to make it of the kind of incredible relationship that I witnessed between you and Mikhail. The kind of the support, the critical support, the intensity, and the kind of love I saw between the two of you, and your commitment to each other's processes and crafts. And I think there's something quite extraordinary in the Southern African or South African photo community, you know, whether it be Soul and Joy, the Market Photo Theatre Workshop, Market Theatre Photo Workshop, David, of course, and the various people that move through, but there's a general community of photographers and photography and how one is supported and supports. So yeah, this last picture we've got up here with with Ernest, and one of your images in the context of also the Santu picture as well, of course, is, yeah, I think something precious. We've come to the conclusion for now, Lindo. Like, I think all of us could probably just carry on listening to how you know, sort of articulate what you've been doing, and this is only a kind of the tip of the iceberg of the images, of course, and the projects. But I just want to say, from me, it's always is and continues to be a pleasure and a privilege to be proximate to what you're doing and how quickly your ideas evolve, and how like, I suppose, how brave you are with them. I think that tree has tested me to it. So I'm incredibly excited for realizing the project that we're about to open sometime this year. And of course, for the work you'll do with One-to-One. David, can I hand over to you? I wonder if there are actually any questions in the audience. I know that this is a webinar, so you can't really put your hand up or anything, but there is a Q&A, and there are a few minutes left. If you want to leave some notes in there, I can see if I can address it. Or otherwise, David, would you like to say a few things before the end?
Yeah, that was just to describe that conversation as fascinating, riveting, moving. That doesn't really cut it. That implies that we were on the outside looking in, as in a webinar. But somehow, you guys, you took us in there with you. So instead of feeling zoomed out, we zoomed into your profound experiences, Lindo. You know, your relationship with your sister, your grandmother, the Niopi thing, which was quite ironic, really, because I didn't realize that the drugs that are being used there, you know, a key ingredient are antiretroviral drugs, ART. So that really turns it on its head, and makes art for art even more sort of profound again in the context of what we're working on with you. Linda, that what is the name of that drug? What do you call it?
It's called Niope.
It's called Niope.
Niope.
Yes.
Niope. Okay, great. So thanks so much for that conversation. It is recorded, so you'll be able to watch it again. You'll be able to forward it to your colleagues and friends. And Josh, we look forward to the next conversation that we'll have with another artist, but also more importantly, Linda, we're looking forward to your visit to the Eastern Cape. Everyone is so excited now that we've seen what's how you get under the surface and how personally it resonates for you. I think this is going to be quite special, and we will certainly have another session with you and Josh after your return and you've been able to process some of the work. If anyone would like to donate to the work of One-to-One and the work of the Mentor Mothers in the Eastern Cape, just go to our website. I think Michael will put it up on the screen. That's you'll be able to go to the donate page and help with this work. So all I can say is thank you very much. Thanks to everyone who's been supporting us for 20 years. And as the film implied, there's more hills to climb. So it'd be great to have you on board as we climb the next hill, and with Linda in particular and Josh through Art for Art. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.